Hey, we're a week early for A Geek Speak.
That's because we have a little piece of information.
It's a
Tiny bite. What we mean to say is that we have a new podcast segment called Tiny Bites.
It's going to hail on your A Geek Speak every other Wednesday.
And what you'll see that we're doing with this is that we are presenting you with a tiny piece of precision agriculture knowledge that's presented in a relatable way and done in a 5 to 10 minute time span.
Information might include things that are of agronomic relevance to precision agriculture management,
Or software relevance, what different file types are, that kind of thing.
hot tips using ADMS software,
And maybe we'll even talk about satellites in space.
and drainage.
Can't forget about drainage. Like Sarah said, you'll see this in your feed every other Wednesday, and we'll be there for a 5-minute conversation that will bring you a tiny bite of precision agriculture knowledge.
That's right. It's a
Tiny bite! And now, back to the show.
Holy buckets. Last Friday night, my phone was ringing off the hook. People could not drive straight in their tractors at all.
I think Friday, May 10th, 2024, and the following weekend will go down in infamy for the rest of farmer time. Because out of seemingly nowhere, even though there were some indications that this was going to be an issue, GPS was majorly affected by some huge solar radiation coming off of the sun.
I got some crazy calls. I mean, people talking about their GPS taking off 5 feet off of the mark of where they were supposed to be. And it wasn't in just one spot. I mean, I was getting calls from Minnesota. You called me, Jody. You were out trying to put your crop in over there by Beulah.
I got in the tractor about 4:30 p.m. on Friday, and my dad, he's like, hey, the GPS is acting funny. I don't know what's going on. And I thought, you know what? Probably just use your error. No problem. I'll get into what's going on. And then all of a sudden, we checked the planter to refill some inoculant, and by the time that I got back in my tractor, my point of my monitor was 10 feet off of where I was when I set that tractor in park. And it was mind-boggling and mind-blowing how much drift was occurring that evening.
So I think it's a really good time to bring up the idea that it really wasn't anybody's fault. It really was the fault of the sun. No kidding. Yes, the fault of the sun.
Absolutely. And let's talk about it. Let's get into why something like GPS can be so affected by seemingly random things like solar radiation.
The news was starting to talk about the forecast of some pretty major solar storms coming in. And certainly we're not disappointed by the northern lights that showed up on those evenings. Gorgeous pictures all over social media.
It was a nice piece of solace and prize for having been so frustrated trying to get soybeans in on Friday night. But yeah, what exactly happened here? When we're going in our tractors and we've got auto steer, we're using some sort of GPS to get us through the field in a straight line or put in variable rates of inputs based on maps. What's happening is that our GPS receivers are taking in satellite signals from satellites that are circling the globe. And there's a number of different satellites that are always circling the globe, sending out signals of exactly where that satellite is and when it sent that ray or that signal to the tractor from space.
And those signals have to travel all the way through many layers of space and atmosphere until it reaches the receivers at the field level. And one of the pieces of that puzzle is that the signal from the satellite to get to the receiver takes a certain amount of time, and we compensate for that. But when we have a solar storm, what happens is when the signals go through ionosphere. Can you help me out with that, Jody?
Ionosphere?
That one. Thank you very much.
I think what happened on the sun is that there was 4 black holes like on the sun's surface that all came together, just emitting this crazy amount of radiation. And so this ionosphere that all these signals need to move through in order to get from the satellite to our tractors was affected. And the signals that travel from those satellites to the tractor were no longer traveling at that same rate of speed that they usually do. So think about it like putting light through a glass of water. And typically, if you've got a clear glass of water, that light's going to travel through there, no problem. You're going to see something, it's going to be a little bit refracted, but we know exactly what that's going to look like. And when we think about what happened on Friday and over the weekend, is that water is now turned into a glass of milk. And light is traveling differently through that glass because it's different. It's a different material that light is trying to get through. And over the weekend, these satellite signals are trying to move through the ionosphere, but that ionosphere is different. And those waves we're then receiving in our GPS, in our globes, in our satellite receivers differently than they normally would. And so at the end of the day, what that meant is that we no longer knew exactly where we were on Earth's surface.
I don't ever know where exactly I am on Earth's surface. We will probably have another solar storm again. Hopefully it's going to happen when it's 30 below outside in North Dakota, because quite frankly, the northern lights are much more beautiful when it's a 30 below night and clear skies. But if it just so happens that it is planting and you do need to drive straight, what can we do?
We can just take the wheel and drive.
We can grab the wheel.
And those are for you talented folks that can drive straight. Good for you guys.
You would not want me being the person grabbing the wheel and actually driving that. That would be so terrible. But you get more in a crooked row.
I may or may not have seen a photograph of a broken arm already on Friday, or a broken marker arm on Friday.
What about those guys that don't even have markers? And I will say, I have seen some guys out there that can actually drive super straight. I have seen it where guys were not able to use GPS and they actually did drive straight. And I actually combined those rows, and I was actually pretty impressed with how straight that corn actually ended up. So it can be done.
It can be done.
Just not by me.
The last time we had a solar flare that was this severe that affected the ionosphere at this level was back in, I think, October or November of 2003. So not at a really deep time of the planting season. So this is why it's been such a big deal. Let's do a little reflecting. So what we know is that on Friday, May 10th, 2024, there was interference with GPS due to a solar storm emitted by the sun,
i.e. the northern lights.
And that affected the ionosphere, messing up the GPS signals that were coming to our tractors, therefore making anything on a tractor very difficult.
A royal pain.
In the end, there's nothing we can do about it. Unfortunately, wrenches do not fix
the ionosphere. The only other thing we can do
time for a
is
tiny
just
bite of knowledge,
grab the wheel
from GK Technology
and drive.
Where we have a map and an app for that.